Hey guys, what's happening? It is Nate from PlayYourCourt.com. Today we are talking about how to improve your forehand with the 4 follow-throughs. All right, today's instruction is all about the finish on the forehand, and this is not a one-size-fits-all. Maybe you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out how the stroke ends, or maybe you have all 4 and you need a refresher. Today's instruction is for Play Court members of all levels. If you're not familiar with our rating system, then get in there, check it out. The platform is super cool, I promise. Scott and I have worked so hard and been so dedicated to making tennis just the best, most popular sport in the world. And there's a little bit of everything for everybody in there. So get in there, check it out. All right, let's jump into this. Okay, so we're all familiar with the most basic follow through, and this is above the shoulder. We've all heard it. All right, if you've taken a lesson, there's zero doubt in my mind at some point, even if it was just one single solitary lesson, the coach said, racket above the shoulder. All right, because this is the way that it was taught for a long, long time. And that's the first one that we're going to discuss. When the racket drops low and finishes high, it's giving us lift. And that's what's producing topspin. It's approaching from a downstairs to upstairs in order to get this topspin, giving us a lift and the ability to hit harder because of the topspin pulling the ball in. So we absolutely want the racket up above the shoulder if we're in a fairly neutral, if we're hitting a fairly neutral ball, and especially if we're just starting out. But that's not the only follow through. We've got 3 others to discuss that are really, really important. So we're gonna start from the very bottom. If you imagine this as shelves, we're gonna go through them all. One of the follow-throughs that we see quite commonly on the tour, WTA, ATP, and you've all seen it, especially by Fed, is this finish that stays low. All right, and you've seen the lift and land where Federer works in and this racket stays really low, typically below the hip, right? About there, yeah. That particular follow-through is really good when the ball is below your knees. Okay, when the ball is especially low, you're working up to it and you're giving it. So they used to kind of call it a rollover forehand. Michael Chang made this famous, especially if you're working off a short angle. All right, if you're working on shaping off the court, that follow through below the hip, right, is going to be really beneficial. So balls located below the knees typically are going to finish below the hip as well. All right, so now we start climbing up. The next one we're gonna talk about is the finish slightly below the shoulder. All right, so we were taught this in the 90s, the 80s, all right? 70s, 60s, a lot of players were hitting like this. Racket wasn't getting all the way around. Doesn't mean that occasionally it wasn't. That's just not how it was predominantly being instructed. But this finish that we see is really a product of these semi-Western grips and the game evolving, having very loose wrists. All right, and you see this quite a bit, especially on drives, getting the ball and hitting those dip drives, that big heavy topspin, racket just below the shoulder here. All right, we see this a lot by Nick Kyrgios, who almost predominantly hits his forehand in this manner. All right, the third that we just discussed in the beginning, right, is the classic above the shoulder. Still great, we still see it all the time. It's an oldie but a goodie, doesn't mean that it should change. The fourth one that we're going to talk about, all right, is the buggy whip forehand made famous by Rafael Nadal. All right, it used to be that, you know, Rafa was predominantly the main one on tour, but it doesn't mean that hasn't been around. If you look at footage of Laver back in the day, there were times that he finished up above his head. And this is because it's really a product, a lot of times, of catching the ball a little bit late. The racket gets behind, or the ball gets behind us a little bit, and as the racket works up, we fight it off with the spin and it ends here. What Rafa made really unique was the lasso, all right? And so what we're talking about is the racket comes up and it goes around the head and finishes out, all right? But we are seeing a lot of players now, specifically on the run, okay? When they're getting pulled off the court and they're having to play up above their head this way, All right, so not entirely the lasso, but this was something that was really important for Federer. Federer had to adopt this buggy whip forehand in order to really compete with Rafa. You know, once they got on the clay and Nadal started really kind of dominating things there for a year or two. And this is because Federer trying to get sideways, hitting off that right foot, and the racket still coming across, just couldn't get there, right? This finish allows you to produce a ton of spin. So it's really helpful when you're getting pulled out wide. All right, but guys, be really careful here, because a lot of times what I see is players swinging and they're making contact here and immediately climbing up, all right, because they're trying to do the buggy whip. That's not the goal. When we're watching footage of Nadal, we still want to see that contact out in front and then it climbing, okay? Really focus on keeping that contact out in front. And what I always tell my students are, if you can drive the ball, finish out in front, use that hand to guide, right? And finish above the shoulder or even with the shoulder, right? And then when you're getting pulled off the court, really work on the buggy whip, that lasso forehand. Guys, really hope you enjoyed today's instruction. If you did, hit the like button. If you never want to miss a Play Your Court video, even from the confines of my house, hit subscribe. We're going to be back on the court really soon. Courts are open up. We can't wait. Super excited. Guys, stay tuned. We'll have more content to you very soon. Take care.